I'm sure you all have seen countless videos of people talking about their favorite Pokemon before and noticed a lot of people in general tend to have the same favorite Pokemon. More popular Pokemon such as Metagross, Greninja, Arcanine, and He Who Shall Not Be Named are among some of the most popular, and I've always noticed that some of my personal favorite Pokemon tend to be the ones you don't hear as much about. Today I want to discuss some of my personal favorite Pokemon, most of which are rather obscure and most of which I haven't really heard mentioned being other people's favorites before. I have a very weird taste when it comes to Pokemon, and there's varying reasons as to why I like each of these Pokemon, so let's just get right into this. First, I want to talk about a Pokemon I reference a lot, and that's Swalot. When I was a kid and I played Pokemon Ruby version for the first time, I remember having a Gulpin on my team pretty early on. I thought it was a pretty cool Pokemon until I found other Pokemon I wanted to use instead, so I replaced it on my team before ever having it evolve into a Swalot. Sometime later, I want to say in about 2017 or so, I started to grow really fondly of the Pokemon Swalot. Back then I streamed Wi-Fi battles a ton, pretty much every single night. I did this for years and always tried to use more obscure Pokemon that you wouldn't see too often, since a lot of the times in online battles you would see the same rotation of Pokemon. I started using Swalot with the move Belch as a joke, and it surprisingly worked and was pretty fun to use. I grew to really like Swalot and appreciate its design more and more. It reminds me of a royal Pokemon you'd see out of Alice in Wonderland or something like that, although that's not really the theme, mainly due to the diamonds on his torso. I even went ahead and collected every single Swalot card ever printed in English, which I still have in my binder. This might seem like there would be a lot though, since the first Swalot card was printed over 15 years ago and so many cards and packs have been released ever since, but there's only been 7 printings of Swalot, with 2 of them being the exact same card, just one of them was from a theme deck and the other was from a core set. The last Swalot card was printed in Celestial Storm in the summer of 2018, nearly 2 years ago, and before that was in Phantom Forces all the way back in 2014. These 2 Swalot cards are the only 2 Swalot cards printed in the last 10 years, giving Swalot some of the least representation in the Pokemon TCG out of any Pokemon, especially from 3rd generation Pokemon. On top of that, Swalot was even omitted from the Pokedex Pokemon Sword and Shield and missed the cut again in the Isle of Armor DLC. Swalot wasn't catchable in any of the Generation 7 games, and outside of any Hoenn-based game, it's really not too common to find in the wild. Hopefully in the future, Swalot gets the respect it deserves, and can at least make it into Sword and Shield or have some sort of holo card printed in the TCG. Until then, you're gonna have to listen to me reference Swalot as much as I can. After the full list of Pokemon added back from the free Sword and Shield update came out, I was disappointed when I saw Swalot wasn't in there, of course, but you know what Pokemon I was happy to see back? Clawitzer. Some of you probably forget this Pokemon existed because it isn't really too common, but me, how could I forget it? Back when X and Y first came out, I got Pokemon X version. I realized that was the right choice when I learned Clawitzer was a Pokemon X exclusive. Now don't get me wrong, the Pokemon Y exclusive counterpart, Dragalge, is really cool as well and one of the first Pokemon I ever bred in X and Y competitively, but Clawitzer is way cooler to me. It has this huge cannon-like arm, with the other one being rather small and scrawny, and you might know what joke I want to make, but I'm going to avoid it to keep things PG, or at least PG-13. But you know what ability it also has? Mega Launcher. I can't think of an ability that fits a Pokemon better than this. This is a really strong ability that boosts the power of Aura and Pulse moves by 50%, making Clawitzer do a lot of damage with moves like Water Pulse and Aura Sphere. It already has a pretty high special attack set of 120, and although it's on the slower side, it has some decent defense to take a hit, and can then go for a slow U-turn to switch out, or go for the new Water-type U-turn attack, which I'm really excited to use. I remember using Clawitzer in a draft league I was in called the NPA a few years ago, and it was really good to me. I named my Clawitzer Greed because I thought Mr. Krabs too cliche, and the whole giant cannon on the right arm with the ability that makes it stronger just made the name Greed feel right to me. Plus it's a crab, or maybe a lobster, I'm not really sure, but either way I think it's really cool. My first introduction to Pokemon was when I first played Pokemon Red version. I was about 3 years old at the time, could barely read and had no idea what I was doing most of the time and needed help from my sisters to get anywhere. I still don't understand how I was able to beat it. I was able to figure out how to evolve my Staryu into a Starmie though, which became one of my favorite Pokemon. So much so that I even had 2 Starmies on my team for some reason. I'm not really sure why I thought this was a good idea, but I did it anyway. And to be fair, Psychic typing was pretty overpowered in Generation 1, so doubling up on the typings, even if it's the same exact Pokemon, wasn't too bad. It's always been one of my low-key favorite Pokemon, so to say, nothing I would ever consider top 5, but definitely a Pokemon that I always love to see. For Generation 8, my favorite new Pokemon is a tie between Sandaconda and Galarian Obstagoon. Sandaconda mainly because it's a giant Beyblade snake and there's really not much else reason I have to give as to why I like it. But for Galarian Obstagoon, I just really like its design as well, and once the Pokemon Sword and Shield base set came out in the trading card game, it brought us an Obstagoon card that was pretty much an auto-win against certain matchups. It has an attack called Obstruct that really isn't too powerful and does 90 damage for 3 energies, but it makes it immune to basic Pokemon's attacks on the following turn. Since most decks at the time were focused on basic Pokemon attacking, it meant that if I was able to get on an Obstagoon, I would have a huge advantage after going for an attack. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus causing the world to go on hold for a while, it cut my playing time with the Obstagoon deck a bit short. I would have had at least 3 or 4 more tournaments with my Obstagoon deck before the next set came out, as that set and the following set make Obstagoon a little bit worse. As I'm sure you guys can tell from the fact that I have a channel dedicated to Pokemon, I've spent a lot of time online reading about Pokemon. This goes all the way back to before when Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out in about the summer of 2006, where I would check Cerebi every day for new information about Diamond and Pearl. One day a few Pokemon were revealed and among them was Mantike. This was a pre-evolution to Mantine, and although I never really cared too much for Mantine, I grew really fond of its pre-evolution. It's literally just a cute baby Mantine with surprisingly good special defense. I used Mantike back in the 6th generation and was able to hold its own surprisingly. Shortly after using Mantike, I remember also trying out Tangela for a similar reason, as it also paired pretty nicely with Mantike. Tangela is also an unevolved Pokemon with high defenses, great for using the Eviolite item. Tangela surely became my quote-unquote mascot, so to say, as I never really had one prior, and it's pretty much a requirement for Poketubers to have mascots, even though I don't really have a specific mascot right now that I think about it. But Tangela was in my profile picture for a good amount of time. I still like Tangela a lot, but it isn't my #1 favorite Pokemon anymore. I tend to flop around favorites a lot, especially my top favorites, but right now my all-time favorite is Vileplume. It has been for probably about 2 years now, and although it is a Generation 1 Pokemon, I never really cared much for it until relatively recently. I've always liked Oddish ever since I was a kid, seeing it from the early episodes of the anime, and because it was a pretty common Pokemon to encounter throughout the first few generations. I even have a Vileplume keychain from Burger King still, which is about 20 years old now. This is probably the most popular Pokemon of the bunch, as it was Erica's signature Pokemon, but still not a Pokemon that I hear talked about too often. So this video doesn't get too long. I really expected this to only be about 5 or 6 minutes long, but here I am sitting about 1500 words typed. I'll just briefly give some honorable mentions to some of my other favorites, although it won't be all since I have quite a few. First, Pumpkaboo, one of the few Pokemon I actually own a plush for. I just really like pumpkins and Halloween themes, and there's really not much else to it. Magikarp mainly for the memes, which I also have a plush of. And of course, if you play through any Kanto-based Pokemon game, you must buy a Magikarp outside of Mount Moon, otherwise you're just doing it wrong. Drampa's up there as well because, well, just look at it, and Fighting type in general is my overall favorite type, despite none of my top favorites being Fighting type, but I've always really liked the Pokemon Conkeldurr, Machamp, the Hitmons, and Scrafty, especially when Generation 5 first came out. All of these are pretty popular Pokemon, but I still like them. As for Megas, my favorite Mega is Mega Aerodactyl. I always like to name it Ragnarok, I just think it looks cool and it's really strong. And for Gigantamax Pokemon, I'm gonna have to give it to Sandaconda, like I mentioned earlier, because it looks like a really cool Beyblade. So what are some of your guys' favorite Pokemon? If I had to give my top 3 favorite Pokemon right now, I would say it would be Vileplume, Swalot, and Clawitzer. Leave a comment letting me know what your favorites are, as well as some less popular Pokemon that you really like. If you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like, as it helps the channel grow a ton and helps YouTube promote the video farther, and subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. Thank you all so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, I will see you all next time, and bye bye.